Welcome to another episode of the Fourth and Goal podcast, back from a 1 week hiatus. We apologize. Both Rob and myself had to travel. I am one of your hosts, Drew, and we have Rob here. Rob, say hi to the people.
Good to see you all coming in from Knysna in South Africa.
Yeah,
Glad to be back. Sorry we had to miss last week.
Nobody who's listening to this knows where Knysna in South Africa is. I don't know where that is, and I like to consider myself decently aware of what's going on in the world as a good Canadian citizen.
Yeah, and you know what? I don't expect people to. This is a hidden gem, but go ahead and take a gander. It's on the Garden Route. It's a beautiful place to be. So lovely to be here. Sorry we missed you guys last week, but we're good to be back. What are you thinking about where we at in the NFL this week, Drew?
Yeah, I mean, I always see the end of week 3 as kind of the time you actually know. Any team in the first couple weeks can have one good game or even two good games and surprise some teams. But by week 3, you have a good idea of who the good teams are and who the bad teams are. And there's always a few surprises. And so that's one of the things we're going to talk about a little this episode is some of the big surprises, both in terms of better than expected and worse than expected. But before we get into that and some of the recaps of the past few weeks, just wanted to go over some of the news and notes that have come through in the past few days. So anything that you have noticed that's been in the football world, Rob?
Well, I mean, it's not necessarily in the football world, but it is in this world of Taylor Swift. Right. I don't know what it's going to be. Travis Tay or, the Swift Kelsey. I don't know. They'll think of a better name than me. But
yeah,
you
Swift
got
Kelsey.
Any hot takes on the hottest relationship perhaps in the world right now?
Honestly, I think it is the hottest relationship in the world. I heard the stats that Travis Kelsey gained 300,000 Instagram followers, and his jersey sales went up 400%. And this is a guy I have to assume was already pretty high on the jersey sale list.
Yeah, exactly. That just shows you the power of Tay, right? That's why I said this is no longer an NFL storyline. This is a global phenomenon.
Yeah, my girlfriend literally reached out to me and was like, I guess I'm a Kansas City Chief fan now. And I was just like, no, you can't bandwagon at this point. I don't think she totally understands.
No, not at all. She doesn't get the betrayal. And that's your fault for having her not being a Detroit Lions fan already.
I know. I haven't forced her to watch along with me. It's too early in the relationship for her to see me at, like, the old saying, like, if you don't like me at my worst, you don't deserve me at my best. My worst is when I'm watching a Detroit Lions game. I acknowledge that.
Especially since they're never winning, so there's not much to celebrate.
Well, I mean, this year, that's not totally true. They've been pretty good this year. Well, I'm sure we'll talk about them a little bit because they are the Thursday night matchup this coming week, so pretty soon.
Yep.
Not too much else in news. I mean, the big news that has happened, obviously, Nick Chubb, one of the gruesome injuries. We didn't really get to talk about that last week, so he's going to be out for the season and questionable if he'll be able to return in his career because he's had injuries on that knee before back in college. We also saw Mike Williams.
The same knee, too. That's just devastating for such a power back like him. And given the state of ownerships and running backs, it's just, again, like the Rodgers injury the week before. It's just not what we want to be seeing.
Yeah, absolutely. We've seen some absolutely brutal injuries. And this week we saw Mike Williams go down with the torn ACL. The Chargers are a bit of an infirmary ward right now with Austin Eckler and Mike Williams down. Though it doesn't seem to slow their offense. Their defense, that's a whole different story. But their offense looks fine.
Well, we knew that coming in, actually. They're one of the teams that, for me, is who they are. They are who we thought we are. Or they are who we thought they were going to be, right? In the sense that their offense is going to be solid. Eckler's out, but they have people stepping up for them. We knew that was going to be a porous defense. I actually have them a little bit later on to talk about in a bit more detail. But who else do you think is playing just who we thought they were?
I mean, I don't quickly on the Chargers, don't totally agree they're who we thought they were. Like, I look at that defense and maybe I'm constantly fooled, but they got Khalil Mack, Joey Bosa, Derwin James, J.C. Jackson, Asante Samuel Jr. Like, That is 5 very good players, and that is all on the pass defense side of the ball. Those are your edge rushers, your safety, your corners that I look at as above average players in the NFL, yet their pass defense is atrocious. And so I don't know if. Oh, go ahead.
It's just that's where you're missing the ethos that is the Los Angeles Chargers, right? It is just in their DNA to have that collection of great talent on the defensive side of the ball and still thoroughly underperform. It's just what they do best.
Yeah, that's fair. I think the most they are who we thought they were team, in my opinion, is the 0-3 Minnesota Vikings. And I get it. They were like 13-4 last year. How can you call an 0-3 team that went 13-4 last year who we thought they were? But the truth is, last year, they just won every tight game. And this year, it's just game. Being the opposite.
11-0 in games that were one possession, right? Like
exactly.
Exact figure, but it's somewhere around there.
I think they were the worst
They were due to regress to the mean, similar to, I think, the Seattle Seahawks, right? That's another team that had regression in that direction written all over it. I think a lot of people would have put probably the other team that I would put into that category that's just as bad as we thought they are in that front is the Raiders. I don't think a lot of people had a lot of hope in the Raiders. I think they continue to underperform just like they always do in that stadium and outside of it this year. So I'm also – those are kind of 3 teams I pegged as like, all right, yep, this is exactly where I thought they were going to be.
And, there's good teams who are who we thought they were too. The teams that scream to me are the Chiefs and the Bills. Like, I know both teams have taken a loss.
Yeah.
But –
and the Niners and the Eagles on the other side of
the Niners for sure. See, the Eagles, I don't totally agree. Yeah, they're 3-0, but that offense is not what I thought it was. That defense looks incredible, but Jalen Hurts has not impressed me. I've watched every Eagles game, and I have not been impressed by Jalen Hurts this season.
Yeah, exactly. And you know me, I've always been a little iffy on the Jalen Hurts wagon. So I'm not entirely. This is a bit more of who I thought he was compared to an outlier of a performance of the season last year. But that brings me to who is surprising us, and I gotta go with I was all in on the Bengals, and oof, they have done me a little dirty early on in the season. Burrow's looking hurt and scared in the pocket. That defense isn't stopping anybody. This team needs to turn it around this week for sure. They have a good lineup. That's the Titans. They should be able to pull one out.
Yeah, I mean, the one quarterback on the season I think we can definitively say that Joe Burrow has been better than is Ryan Tannehill.
Not hard. Not a hard leap, and also not a great place to be if you're Joe Cool.
No. I did think he made some good plays in the second half of last night's game. For those watching, we are filming this on Tuesday afternoon, evening. So on the Monday Nighter, the second half, I thought he was fine. They made a bit of a comeback, but he still was, I think, 50% completion rate for 250 yards, no touchdowns, and an interception. That's like, and they were living off of Evan McPherson long field goals. He was 4 for 5, and I think every field goal was greater than 45 yards. So they were not getting deep into Rams territory very often in that game.
No, and a lot of fantasy teams, fantasy weeks were decided in the most gut-wrenching fashion with all those long-distance Evan McPherson field goals. Somebody out there swung a couple of fantasy games, and you just love it when the kickers come through with such a meaningful
in our league, I have Evan McPherson, so I was quite happy. Now, I didn't need him to win, but it didn't hurt.
Oh, nice little humble brag there. So other teams that have been surprising me this season so far, I actually think the New Orleans Saints. I didn't have a lot of faith in them, but they're looking like a good team. The Carr effect is working out there. They have some electric players. They lost their running back. Well, one of them's been suspended. The other one's on the IR, and they still haven't really missed a beat. It's a weak division that they can just beat up on teams. Whether or not it's sustainable, I'm not too sure, but I have been impressed by the New Orleans Saints so far this year.
So for me, I think this is one where I expected them to be a 9-10 win team this year, primarily because of the division. And, looking back at their wins, they beat the Ryan Tannehill-led Tennessee Titans by 1 point. they lost to the Packers, and I can't remember. I think their other game was it like the Raiders or the Panthers or someone?
Yeah, I want to say it was the Panthers.
It might
I
have
wanna
been the
say they
Panthers.
beat up
So
on
it's
the
like,
Panthers.
you know, I'm gonna hold out something until we see them beating really good competition. But that's
That's
a
fair
team.
enough. That's fair enough.
The team that surprised me negatively, actually, though, is the Tennessee Titans. Now, let me be clear. I picked the Tennessee Titans to be a bit better this year. I picked Derrick Henry to be better at running the ball. I didn't think Ryan Tannehill had it anymore, but I thought they'd, one, move to Will Levis faster than they are. I'm just waiting for that to happen. And two, I put in our preseason bets, and we can talk about this maybe a little bit on Bookie Bob's Corner. I put $30 on Derrick Henry to clear, I think, 1,150 yards. He's close to on pace, but the fact that you got to bake in some missed games. You got to bake in some bad games. He has not looked good. His snaps are not there. He's splitting that backfield. And that is not the recipe for the Tennessee Titans having a bounce back season. Everyone knew for that to happen, Derrick Henry had to be Derrick Henry. And either the team's not using him like that, or he's just not the same guy. I don't know what the answer is, but the Tennessee Titans are a team that has surprised me negatively.
Yeah, definitely, especially with that Derrick Henry pick, which you were all over. And what's interesting to me about that is you had said something that I agreed with, was like, this is pretty much a bet for Derrick Henry not to get injured. But all of a sudden, we're seeing a different Titans team altogether. Like you said, a split backfield. And I was all in on Derrick Henry on a few fantasy teams. So I'm also a bit miffed by this. Hopefully he comes on like he does towards the end of the season and puts up a lot of yards when the defenses are tired, right?
Yeah.
So there's still a bit of that hope left for that bet. But yeah, the Titans for me, this is exactly where I thought they were going to be. I think maybe like the Saints for you. I'm not impressed by this team. I was never impressed walking in. So there's that.
Yeah, and I mean, the team that surprised me, I think everyone can get on board with that this team has surprised a lot of people. It's the Miami Dolphins.
Yeah, I mean, I thought they were going to be explosive, but I didn't think they'd be putting up 70 points like that.
Like
That's
I thought
When's
this
the last
team.
time that's happened?
I don't think in this century, and that's wild.
That is wild.
I did a preseason QB power ranking. I put Tua Tagovailoa at number 8, and I think a lot of people thought that was way too high. All of a sudden, that seems pretty low.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, I had him last year. I was watching him a lot. It was just those concussions that was the only thing holding him back. And so now that he's got his ticker on right, his brain working, hopefully we can keep him in the games and keep him throwing bombs, because that team cannot be stopped. And actually, I don't know if that brings us to this week's picks. I think we're around there. But I have the Dolphins upsetting the Bills. That's one of the most exciting games of the week for me. Divisional game. I don't know if you want to take it from there.
I think it is. I think I do want to quickly, before we get into this week's games, do a little bit more of a recap of last week. I mean, we talked a bit about that 70-point performance, but my question for you, do you think that Dolphins 70 spot, is that more of a statement on the Dolphins or on the Broncos?
I mean, you know how I feel about the Broncos. I was always shorting them all year. That's looking like a hell of a bet already, 3 weeks in.
Yep.
So it's a bit of a both. It's a bit of a good team hitting their stride early on, and it's an overhyped team coming in and getting absolutely mollywomped. That's not impressive. All right, so that for me is a bit more of an anomaly, similar to like the Newcastle game this weekend, 8 points. But the more important, I think the bigger games that I was victim to in our last week's bets, and a lot of people I saw in pick'em leagues and things all over, is you had the Jags losing, you had the Cowboys losing, and you had the Ravens losing. Those were teams in parlays all over the nation. Ravens dropped the ball to the Colts. The Jags dropped the ball to the Houston Texans, of all people, and the Cardinals putting one up on the Cowboys. So for me, those are the 3 games that I think shocked the most people this week. What about you?
Yeah. Oh, I mean, absolutely. Those shocked some people. The one piece of good news, you and I while we fell into the trap in our picks, we did not fall into the trap on our picks of the week. Both of us taking Kansas City over the Bears. So I believe we are both still alive. If you follow our locks of the week, we are alive in Survivor if you've been listening to us. And
Indeed.
And I'm gonna, so for anyone listening, FYI, when we're making picks, I am making my locks of the week Survivor eligible, meaning I will not pick the same team twice. You're not gonna see me pick the 49ers every week, though you might see it this week. But yeah, I mean, the Cowboys losing, I mean, that just seems like what the Cowboys do, though, to me. Like, I think the Cowboys are a good team, but they're a team that just sometimes doesn't show up. And their path to the playoffs, their path to a championship, is that they don't have one of those weeks in the playoffs. But this is a team, this has always been who the Cowboys are under Dak Prescott with this defense. I entirely expect them to bounce back. Do not expect that to be the new consistency for them, that this is who they are. They always have these weeks. On another note, though, we got to stop thinking of the Cardinals as the worst team in the league. You know, yeah, they lost to the Giants, but guess what? They were up 20 points at half. Yeah, they lost to the Commanders, but barely. Like, they are in games. They are playing well. Josh Dobbs, who was a free agent acquisition, and right now the Jets are wishing to God they had found Josh Dobbs before the Cardinals did. But, yeah, they look fine. They are not the worst team in the league. I don't think they're a playoff team. I don't think they're going to have a winning record. Don't mistake what I'm saying. But they are not the worst team in the league, and we got to stop thinking of them as that.
Yeah, I don't think they're pushovers. Even in that division, they might not even be the worst. The Seahawks might have that title.
Really?
But that, I mean, I don't know. Like, I have been unimpressed with the Seahawks so far.
I mean, the Seahawks, they got beat by the Rams, but they beat the Lions. And I know you don't like the Lions, but the Lions are 2-1. The Lions beat the Chiefs and the Falcons, who won both of their other games. The Seahawks also stepped on the Panthers pretty good. Again, yeah, the Panthers, but I'm not going to give one bad week against the Seahawks. They played week 2, week 3. They were really good.
Fair. Again, I think this is very much shaping up to be the toughest division in football. The way I thought it was the AFC North heading into the season, but this NFC West is looking pretty cutthroat.
Yeah. I'll give you that.
Anything else from the last week's round of games? I mean, I think the Bears are who we thought they were.
I think the Bears are who I thought they were. There's a lot of people who are on the Justin Fields hype train. You know my thoughts. I was shorting Justin Fields any opportunity I got, and that's like my Broncos call for you. You got that 100% right. This one I got 100% right.
Yeah, definitely. That man, they have been an awful team, but somehow I keep falling prey to the Bears and the picks. But hopefully I can repeat the excellent slammer of a week I had last week. 13-3, bringing us even in one pick behind Las Vegas, which is not so bad, my friend. After 3 weeks, I think we can be quite pleased with ourselves heading into week 4.
No, absolutely. You know, obviously our goal is to beat Vegas. That's what we're going against. But to beat Vegas, that means you have to call more upsets than you get wrong. That's incredibly difficult. Vegas only picks the likely outcome. In order to beat them, you have to pick more unlikely outcomes than you miss. And that is not an easy task, but I think we're both doing pretty well. Your picks were great last week. You went, and bring up your picks for this week. We're looking at last week. Rob, you went 13-3 last week. Absolutely remarkable week. Vegas only did 11-5. You called some good upsets, made a pretty sizable comeback against Vegas and myself from those. I think the only ones you got wrong were the Cowboys, the Ravens, and I'm trying to remember what your other one. Do you remember what your other
Jags.
one? The Jags, yeah. Which
Jags.
I mean,
just those three.
Just those three. And speaking of that Ravens game, the one team we haven't talked about, I don't want to spend a lot on them, but I got to give a shout out that are better than we thought they were, is the Indianapolis Colts. We got to give them props. They are 2-1. They have beat some good teams. Anthony Richardson has looked good. He missed last week, and the Gardner Minshew-led team beat the Ravens.
I love Gardner Minshew. Who doesn't love Gardner Minshew?
Everyone loves Gardner Minshew.
He was playing for the Jags, winning games. He wins like his first game and then proceeds to lose all the other games that he plays. But he'll come in that like win a sloppy 21-17, field goals into the absolute end of the game, and just the swag. I think everyone's on the Gardner Minshew train. So let's keep more of that going for sure.
Absolutely. But we're going to put your picks for this week back up here, Rob. So speaking of you falling into the Bears trap, you did pick the Bears again in what has got to be the worst game on the NFL schedule all year. The Broncos at the Bears.
It reminds me of that Broncos game that was on Thursday Night Football. It might have even been in London or something, where Al Michaels was just apologizing the whole time about the atrociousness of play. I think it was like 9-6 at some point. I forget who they were playing. That's this game this week. So I'm picking the Bears over the Broncos. Again, you kind of have to go with a couple of upsets to beat Vegas. The fact that the Broncos are favored, I guess they have to pick a favorite at some point. But
yeah,
they're in Soldier Field. The Bears should be able to win one game this year. This could be it. So that's why I'm picking the Bears. I'm not picking them in a pick 'em or anything like that or with much confidence. I just figured if they're going to win a game, this could very well be it. And it just continues the Broncos are actually god-awful and nobody seems to care or see it.
What makes this difficult, I think the Broncos are bad. I don't think they're Bears bad, but it is in Chicago, and you're right. If the Bears are going to win a game, I don't think there's a better opportunity to win a game than this one because the Packers and Lions in the division both look good. The Vikings, I mean, yeah, they are 0-3, but they're a much better team 0-3 than the Bears are. And they don't have many easy games left on the schedule, and especially easy home games. This is probably their best opportunity to win all year. So we'll see what happens. Going through the rest of your picks.
A couple other notables here. I'm back on the Jags bandwagon. Fool me once, shame on me. I think they can be. I think this Falcons team's a little overrated. I know they've been sneaky, winning a couple games, but I just don't see it. I got one more. Again, I was high on the Jags preseason. I'm going to give them one more shot. Otherwise, I think the Rams can beat the Colts. I know we've just talked about the Colts being impressive, but that's another upset I have out here. I think that Rams team is tougher than they look. Always got, coming around on the Saints there. I think they can beat the Bucs in that divisional game. And then at the end of the games towards the nights are all in my mind. It's almost a little dangerous because I've picked all favorites heading into like the later games, the Sunday night games, the Monday nights, right? Saints, Eagles, Chargers, 49ers, Cowboys, Chiefs, Giants, right? So I don't like picking all those favorites down the stretch there. But I got a couple of my upsets early in the day. So I think by around, 5 p.m. Eastern time, I'll have a good idea of how my week's going to shake out.
Yeah. I mean, I like your picks for the most part. We differ a few, so we'll get my picks up here. Some of the ones I differ with, I've taken the Vikings to beat the Panthers. We actually both picked the Rams to upset the Colts. I think this is more of the Rams looked scrappy against the 49ers. They looked very good against the Seahawks. Not as good on Monday Night Football against the Bengals last night, but I'm going to trust for a bit of a bounce back. Still not totally sold on the Colts, but I think very much so the Colts could go 3-1 and show that they're legit in the AFC South. And if the Falcons are able to beat the Jaguars, the Colts might become the favorites in that division, which no one had going into the season.
No, that would have been a great pick, actually.
Yeah.
And those are those crapshoot divisions where sometimes you just got to take the team no one's thinking about.
Exactly. So I took that upset. My other upsets, I didn't take as many this week. I got a little fast and loose on my upsets in recent weeks and got burned. So I took the Texans with the Steelers. Again, I know you're a Steelers fan. I think that I liked the Texans last week. They looked very good against the Jaguars. They're at home. CJ Stroud just seems to be getting better. Nico Collins and Tank Dell looking like an elite receiving core. I'm liking the Texans in that game. In my other one, what?
Don't tell anyone. I'm actually somewhat nervous about this game.
You should be. Like the Texans, the Texans, again, not a team I'm quite ready to jump on they're better than we thought they were, but they're looking, they could be a surprising team down there. Again, that AFC South is not as bad as a lot of us predicted. We got some good teams down there. And then the other one I have the Seahawks beating the Giants on Monday Night Football. With these games, though, we both do have the Cardinals at 49ers. The 49ers winning that as our lock of the week. Also, I'll put Vegas up here as well. Vegas also has them at the lock of the week. I think that's a massive game. Obviously, talked about the Cardinals are a better team than we thought they were. But again, this is the 49ers at home against a team that's not competing for the playoffs. It's not the worst versus best that we might have thought a few weeks ago, but it's the best versus a not very good.
Right. It is our lock of the week. I have supreme confidence this game. I have it as my pick'em in another Survivor League. So, Again, if the Cardinals are going to go and tear up both the Cowboys and the 49ers in back-to-back weeks, then maybe we do have to reassess the talent level, and I'll stick by my statement that they're better than the Seahawks.
To me, that's one of the boldest claims I've heard. In my opinion, they're not better than the Seahawks. I do agree with you. The NFC West might be the best division because the Cardinals a lot better than expected and the Rams a lot better than expected, with the 49ers, who was my Super Bowl pick, looking like they probably are the best team in the league if Brock Purdy is who he looks to be.
Yeah. Oh, God. But he is. Don't get me too excited.
Yeah. He's so fun to watch, and that team is so fun to watch. Indeed. I think that's a pretty good discussion of the games. Some really good ones. Again, you did briefly talk about the Dolphins-Bills. I think that's the best game of the week. That should be an absolute bloodbath, high-scoring affair. That is the game to watch in the 1 o'clock window. And also, the Thursday Night Football match, Lions at Packers. Haven't really talked about that. I picked the Lions. I'll acknowledge that's a bit of a homer pick from me. I think the Packers could take this one. It's in Lambeau Field. It's on short rest. The Lions are a bit hurt. And this is really a must-win game for the division for the Packers. Because if you don't win this, you've got to win in Ford Field.
Yeah, I had it under consideration for a little bit there. In terms of one of the bets I was looking at, I just couldn't pull the trigger. These Thursday night games are frisky. You know me, and just overall thinking that the Lions tend to lose these sort of games. So I would not be surprised if the Packers sneak this one out. That Packers team it's not who we thought they are. They're not surprising me either. I can't make anything out of that Packers team. They seem to be streaky. Sometimes they're putting together drives. Other times they're absolutely stalled. I don't really know what to make of them.
I think the Packers team is who we thought they were. It's just a question of who is Jordan Love. And I think that's why it's tough to tell. The rest of the team is exactly what you expected, in my opinion.
Yeah, perhaps that's a good way of saying it.
Yeah.
The only other real games I thought that were noteworthy, again, we need the Bengals. I need the Bengals to bounce back there. I think they can do it against the Titans. And then really that just set of kind of like favorites towards the end. I mean, which one of those teams in the latter half of the games, Monday night, Sunday afternoon, do you think has the biggest chance of an upset? Because we almost went all chalk, right? On favorites.
I mean, the biggest one, I think, the one I called was the Seahawks. But if we take away the Seahawks, if we're only looking Chiefs, Cowboys, 49ers, Eagles, those later games that are all heavy favorites.
Yeah.
I think the most I'm torn between the Cowboys and Eagles because obviously last year we saw the Eagles lost their undefeated season to the Commanders, to the football team. So that could happen again. And the Cowboys, never underestimate Bill Belichick. He can find what you want to do and exploit it. That's the thing with Bill Belichick. If you manage to find another way to win, you're going to win against him. But he will take what you want to do, and he will say, I will not let you do that. If you find another way to win, congratulations.
Yep, and that kind of brings us to Bookie Bob's betting corner because
Yep.
you had called it the week before when I was very on Tyreek Hill and Waddle to go for 200 plus receiving yards, but you were like, beware the Belichick effect. And I did indeed lose that bet. Of course, they went off for way more than that the next week and the week before. So obviously, there was something in the water with that Belichick pick. But speaking of making great bets, my friend, you are on an absolutely cataclysmic tear. Just so everyone to know right now, we are 3 weeks in. For those of you keeping score at home, we are placing bets. We have a total of $100 that we're placing over the course of the season. Each week we place our bets. Drew over there has yet to miss a bet. He has placed 4 regular season bets, hit all 4, and is up a whopping $104 profit already. That's 208% for those of you doing the calculus. I'm not too bad at myself. I'm up 78%, a good $27.27. But next to the savant over there, it's kind of putting me to shame. Any thoughts on your inability to pick wrong?
It's going to turn. It's 100% going to turn. I acknowledge that. And we talked a bit about some of the picks out there and some of the props out there. Not a big fan of a lot that's out there this week. Nothing that really caught my eye. I think the betting sites are starting to see players as what they are. And so there's a little less opportunity to take advantage of some misperceptions of players. Again, like some of the picks I've made, I picked the Lions to win in week 1. Obviously, that was a risky pick, but week 1, coming in, team that loves to, quote-unquote, bite kneecaps. I like that pick. I've taken some Puka Nacua action, some Bills action. It's been a lot of take the team and take the player that people haven't bought into or people have sold on. Like I picked the Stephon Diggs after the Bills had that really poor game against the Jets. And I was like, no, that's not the Bills. I'm going to put in Stephon Diggs and the Bills win and got some good money there. And then this past week, and then I also picked Christian McCaffrey to go and Puka Nacua to go for a ton of yards. Nobody really liked Puka Nacua. It's like, oh, 1 week wonder. It's like, no, he's playing the Cooper Kupp role. Matt Stafford has always had a singular wide receiver. Look through history. It was Calvin Johnson. Then it was Kenny Golladay. Then it was Cooper Kupp. Now it's Puka Nacua. It's always one guy. He loves to target that one guy. So I'm going to trust it. So I think that's kind of been my strategy, but there's a little less of those opportunities coming out. So this week, I only put in one bet, and I don't love it. I really don't love it. It was, I believe, was it Tua and Allen to go for 600 plus passing yards in that game. Basically looking for a shootout. Pays out plus 350, was it?
Yes, it is. Plus 350 combined Allen and Tua 600 plus passing yards. So you pretty much need over 300 yards per quarterback against each other. I was close on that, but I thought that there could be some more running actually from those guys, a little bit of scrambling to catch up some of those yards. I could see like a scenario if someone goes 270 and 320 and you just missed by a dozen or so, right? That's kind of like what had scared me away from that. But, or, I mean, you could also hit this in the first half.
Yeah.
It's going to be one or the other.
It was one of those bets. I made it because I thought it was the best value out there. But a lot of the bets I've made that have had plus odds, I've actually liked them against the spread. Like that Christian McCaffrey, Puka Nacua, I think they needed like 200 rushing and receiving yards. I loved that pick from the get-go. It paid, I think, plus 220, but it was like, oh my God, this is, like, I would bet this on even money. This is not a bet I would make on even money. This is a bet on the plus 350, trying to take advantage. Didn't put a lot into it, put $5 into it. And we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I was also a little scared this week. There's only really 2 games that I took money line. So one of my bets was $2. I parlayed the Bengals and the Chargers. I think, again, the Bengals are in. I think Vegas is sitting on them low. Again, they could have just had a slow start to the season. The Titans do not scare me. That's a game I think that can get the Bengals right back on track. And I think the Chargers are just good value there. I was just looking for another game to kind of sweeten that pot a little bit with the Bengals there. So I'm hoping the Chargers can come through for me. And that brings, I forget what the total of that tease was, but I'm only throwing $2 on it. And it was somewhere around plus two.
I think it was plus 100 and something. Yeah.
Yeah, plus 100 something. So we'll confirm that. The other two bets I feel like are both a trap, but also really enticing to me. So I got $2 on two different prop bets involving Steelers. So one of them is, and I actually like this. It's $2 on Myles Garrett and TJ Watt to record 2+ sacks each for plus 950. And again, this is like a famine or bust sort of situation in the fact that they either get like 3 sacks or 0, generally, these guys. But these are teams that I think they can perform against, right? I think you have the Browns and the Ravens. Like, that offense is one that can get sacked, the Ravens. And the Texans, again, don't scare me. They might win that game, but they might also give up 6 sacks, and they could do both. So I actually think at plus 950, that's pretty good value. So I'm throwing $2 on that.
Yeah, that's definitely a value play. Like, you're never going to make a straight up bet or anywhere close to a straight up bet on two guys to get 2+ sacks. But at plus 950, you're getting a decent return on your investment there. I don't mind that pick at all. And you did make one more bet, another Steelers bet.
Yeah, another Steelers bet. This one is probably very much less value and probably the one that's going to miss if it's going to be anything. And that's George Pickens and Tank Dell to combine for 150+ receiving yards. Again, this is almost a hedge against my Steelers where, like, if we're going to lose, it's because Tank Dell torches our secondary. And Pickens is rolling. He's actually got a good amount of yards every game. I can see him putting up, 70, Tank Dell putting up 100, and that's giving me plus 240. So I'm throwing $2 there. So I'm spreading my $2 on 3 different bets. So I'm wagering a grand total of 6. But I like to run and gun. I like to just get some money out there. Again, not the biggest fan of the games themselves. There's either huge favorites or too close pick'ems to tell one way or the other. So let's get some fun prop bets out there, and then see if we can't get a Bengals Chargers tease to come through.
Yeah, I think that's what we're looking at. I don't think either of us loved anything this week. You're well aware I've put a lot more on most of my bets. I've been putting $25 on a bet, $20 on a bet, like putting a little bit more of my money out there. I had entirely planned to do that this week, just nothing that immediately came to mind. Now, that doesn't mean closer to the game, if some new props, some new things get released, I might shoot Rob a message, make some additional bets, at which point we'll talk about the results of those next week. But for now, what's available, nothing really caught my attention greatly, and I think, Rob, you're the same, which is why right now we have pretty low dollar figures invested in this week.
Right, exactly. Same thing. It's just it was either coin tosses or landslides to favorites, and I didn't have the balls to pick any of those big upsets.
Yeah, so, you had a bit of a rough time with your pick'ems last week. Again, you went 13-3 last week in your picks, yet you made a parlay where you lost 2 of 3 games.
Exactly, and I'm a little gun shy as a result. I'm not gonna lie. So let's see. Let's just throw the money on the players, and I like betting on good players, right? So that's why a Myles Garrett, TJ Watt kind of parlay there is something I enjoy, because it's like, it's one thing if you're betting on Josh Dobbs and he doesn't do well, and you're like, well, why did I have money on Ryan Tannehill, for instance? I'd much rather have my money on Joe Burrow and the Bengals and watch them crash and burn and been like, well, I'll take that every time when Tannehill goes off for 4. So I like that I got money on good players. That being said, we might not be very excited about the betting of this week, but I think it's a hell of a slate of games in general. We're going to see who we thought they were and who's going to surprise us. I'm looking forward to connecting again next week to discuss.
Yeah, absolutely. The one last thing I do want to go through before we leave Bookie Bob's Corner. What are your thoughts on some of your season long bets? So, Rob briefly did describe earlier that we have $100 to bet throughout the season. We also bet $100 at the beginning of the season on season long bets. So, a quick little update on how you feel about those bets thus far.
I would say I'm 50-50. So I obviously am shooting and missing a little bit on my Bengals to win and to be MVP Joe Burrow, and then also my Jags to come and kind of be a surprising team there. Those are kind of not doing well, but I am thrilled with my over and unders. So I had Commanders over 6.5 wins, looking solid. Broncos under 8.5, and that one just thrills me to no end. As well as Tony Pollard to score 10 plus TDs. That seems like a ringer. And those three bets, I have a grand total of $50. So that's half the kitty. So half of my kitty, I'm quite confident in. The other half, again, a bit more of the long shot stuff. So overall, it's looking in the money today. How about yourself?
Yeah, I think I'm less happy with my bets. I think there's some that are decent, but the 49ers to win the Super Bowl, I really like that bet. I think that was a good pick, good value pick, but Jalen Hurts MVP does not look like that's happening with how he's playing. Nick Bosa, Defensive Player of the Year, has not come back at the level I thought he would from that holdout, and you picked TJ Watt. Looks like he could be. It's him and Micah Parsons at this point, in my opinion. Jahmyr Gibbs, he's been decent for the Lions, but he has not been MVP pace. That was a value bet, but Bijan, Anthony Richardson, who you picked, there's some guys out here playing. I don't think Jahmyr Gibbs has much of a shot at that. I did pick Cowboys over 9.5. Like that one.
That should be good. You should be good there.
Browns under 9.5. Less. I still think it's a decent bet because of that division, but with the Bengals not being who we thought they were, less confident in that one. And then the Derrick Henry one we talked about at the top of the show. That's where I have $30 of that 70 in.
Yeah.
That's going to be the make or break for my my picks for the start of the season. But yeah, that's a quick
especially at minus 112. That one,
But that's it for our picks. For our recap on that and Bookie Bob's Corner. Again, we will be back to another podcast episode next week. Last week was the 1 week we're going to be off. We are going to be doing these weekly from here on out. Not totally sure, Rob, if you're going to be able to make next week because you're still off in Africa. But if Rob's unable to make it, I will still be here doing it. Do you know if you'll be able to make it, Rob?
It's going to be tough. I'll be in Kenya that night. I'm not entirely sure what my situation is going to be. I'm actually on holiday finally, so not work, which means that although my schedule should be a little less fixed, it is a little less fixed, if you know what I mean. So I'll confirm by the end of the week. Hopefully I'll see you guys next week, but if not, I'll definitely be here every week for the rest of the year. So thanks for your patience. Hope you appreciate the content in the meantime.
Yep, and for anyone who wants more football action, we will be streaming. I will be doing a live stream for the Thursday night football game, Lions at Packers, as well as the Sunday night and Monday night games. That's going to be happening all season long. So if you're catching this episode a little down the road, don't worry. You can still tune in. We will still be streaming at 4th and Goal 101. It is our tags on all social media. That's YouTube here, Twitch, TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter. If you follow our Twitter, you will be able to see our updated picks, updated bets. We're going to start posting them there when we make them. So tune into that if you don't trust us when we're making bets from here on out.
Indeed, and that wraps up Bookie Bob's Betting Corner. It's been a fun chat. Good week, Drew. And we'll, as always, stay in touch. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you all over the course of the week.
Yep. We'll see you all hopefully on Thursday night. If not, for next week's episode. Thank you for tuning in. Laters.